Bro, the plasma rifle is better than you.
What the fuck?
Hello everybody, how are you all doing? Hope you're having a great day today. This is going to be the sequel to my previous video on what the best weapons and attachments are. I've received so much good feedback from the community and a request to look into the time to kill of the weapons. Now, you might be wondering,
but why? Why would you do that? Why would you do any of that?
DPS is how fast you deal damage. The faster you deal damage, the faster things die. And so the DPS of the weapon should reflect in the TTK, right? Right. Well, no, not always. For example, on lower difficulties, it is actually better to go with the Kramer than it is to go with the plasma rifle, even though I ranked the plasma rifle higher than the Kramer in my previous video. And the reason for that is that on lower difficulties, the Kramer can one-shot a runner, thereby giving it a TTK of 0 seconds, but the plasma rifle can't, so his TTK, although still less than a second, it is still longer than the Kramer's 0 seconds. So DPS and TTK aren't necessarily the same thing, but then again, this example is on lower difficulties. And you don't play on lower difficulties, do you? Nah, like yours truly, you're a stud muffin and you play on extreme or above. All my builds are also extreme or above certified. Go check them out if you haven't already. Shameless plug aside, let's calculate the TTK of all the weapons I talked about in the previous video, which were the automatic assault rifles, SMGs, and automatic non-AoE heavy weapons. For that, we will make use of that handy stats bar on the corner of the gun screen. We'll need all of that information, but we need one more thing, and that is the health of what we're trying to kill. Luckily, I found a Reddit post where all the health values of each individual enemy was displayed, and oh boy, that's a whole lot of health values, and that translates into a whole lot of math. However, the math behind this is very simple. You go to this website, you put in the values, and the website tells you the TTK, aside from a few other things like the amount of bullets required, time spent reloading, etc, etc. I will focus on TTK in this video, otherwise the video will be extremely long. I've already compiled them into a format that's easily digested. On the left side you will see the enemies and their associated health, and on the top you will see our guns. We will start with the assault rifles on extreme difficulty. We'll also be using the best in-slot muzzle and magazine, that being the ported compensator and alloyed magazines for the pulse rifle, Halberd, Kramer, and Type 88, and the recoil booster and rapid dispersal unit for the plasma rifle. And here are the regular TTKs, no crits. I won't be going over all of the seconds like I did in my previous video about DPS, just pause the video if you want to have a closer look. I also used some color coding. The red is the highest TTK and therefore the worst. Yellow is the runner-up TTK and green is the lowest TTK, which is the best one of course. If we look at the runner alien, we can see that every assault rifle starts pretty much the same. It is when we start looking at the other aliens that we start seeing a huge discrepancy. It doesn't take long before the plasma gun completely takes over. There is already a 1 second difference between it and the runner-up TTK, which is the Halberd. The difference in TTK kinda shortens with the Prowler, but then becomes longer again moving onwards until we get a difference of almost 20 seconds when we look at the Praetorian. And this discrepancy becomes even more apparent when we look at the TTK on insane difficulty. The gap between the Kramer and the plasma rifle is even bigger now, more than 25 seconds on the Praetorian. You might be wondering, why is that? Well, it's because of the rapid dispersal unit. This attachment makes the plasma rifle's reload less than a second when fully procced. This means that you have less time reloading the weapon, and the longer the engagement, the more you reload, the bigger the gap between the Kramer and the plasma rifle becomes. You just take too much time reloading with the Kramer in the end. Not to mention that the plasma rifle also has a lot more bullets per magazine, contributing to its DPS. The other thing we notice is the Halberd, which I placed lowest in the rankings on my DPS video. So we can already conclude that DPS does not equal TTK, but it is a significant factor. This reinforces my statement that the Halberd is the worst gun out of all the fully automatic assault rifles. However, some of you might remember that I ranked the Halberd higher when it came to crit DPS. Before we continue on this train of thought, I need to apologize to the people who watched my previous video. I miscalculated the crit DPS of weapons. Now, before you pick up your torches and pitchforks, hear me out. I have a perfectly reasonable explanation. When I was calculating the crit DPS of weapons, I believed that the weak point damage was added to the base value, and that was mainly because of the smart gun. If you look at the smart gun unmodded, you see that its weak point damage is 100%. And because of that, I figured it was an added value. I thought to myself, why would Cold Iron Studios make a gun of which the crit damage is the same as its base damage? That doesn't make any sense. It wasn't until our friendly Discord mathematician asked me how I calculated the crit DPS and subsequently played a friendly game together that I noticed that the values in-game didn't match the values in my spreadsheet. So later that night, I decided to hop into a solo game and test out my theory. I was completely shocked when I saw that the smart gun did the same amount of damage on the chest as on the head. And for that, I apologize. I should have tested it, but I took the easy way out. This will not happen again, I promise you. I always test things out very rigorously. That's the whole reason why my build videos take so long to make, because I test each and every new change in the loadout extensively, weighing my options. But I digress. Here are the new correct DPS values for crit DPS on all the weapons. Pause the video if you want to take a closer look. This also changes the ranking order for the assault rifles somewhat. The Halberd has jumped over the Kramer and is now the second best assault rifle when it comes to crit DPS. And with that, we can now take a look at the crit TTK of assault rifles, and we see a big shift in numbers. The pulse rifle and the Type 88 heavy assault are fighting each other, trying to stay out of that last place. The Kramer has fallen from its runner-up position, having been surpassed by the Halberd, albeit by a small margin, but of course, the plasma rifle reigns supreme. On Insane, we kinda see a struggle between the Kramer and the Halberd for the second place, but the plasma rifle just looks on at the struggle in the comfort of its own league. And this just reinforces the claim that the plasma rifle is statistically the best in slot assault rifle. But if that's the case, then why isn't it meta? Why isn't it more widely used? I don't really have an answer for that. I'm not at home in psychology. My best guess is that the Kramer has the highest damage numbers displayed on screen, and people might instinctively gravitate towards the gun that shows them bigger damage numbers. Other people gravitate towards guns that are simply iconic, like the pulse rifle and the smart gun, because those people want the iconic James Cameron Aliens feel. Another reason might be that people just see the plasma rifle, see that it has the lowest base value out of all the other assault rifles, and don't give it a second look. Or, and I have to apologize because this really grinds my gears sometimes, people are just getting misinformed by others. I see a lot of posts on Reddit claiming that the guns you start with are actually the best ones. Well, these numbers don't lie. The pulse rifle, when it comes to crit DPS and crit TTK, is actually the worst assault rifle in the game, only sharing its place with the Type 88 when on insane difficulty. Now let's take a look at the SMGs. Here we'll be using the recoil booster muzzle and drop magazine attachments. If you've seen my previous video, you will know my SMG ranking, with the M39 being the highest ranking SMG and the Barrage Flechette being the lowest. Well, the TTK kinda reflects that. The M39 has the lowest TTK across the board, except for this one outlier with the synths. And the Barrage Flechette has the highest TTK, occasionally sharing its last place with the PPZ. And on Insane, the difference is even bigger. On Extreme, there is almost a 20-second gap between the M39 and the Barrage Flechette versus the Praetorian. But on Insane, the gap is even bigger, 23 seconds. However, the gap isn't as large when we look at the crit TTKs, but the ranking doesn't change. The M39 beats them while the Barrage Flechette and the PPZ are fighting to get out of last place. But you might have noticed the weird outliers on the PPZ, the small moments where it's actually on first place. Why is that? Well, that's because the PPZ has the largest magazine size. A larger magazine translates into less reloading, which in turn translates into less reloading time. But after the M39 is done reloading, it quickly catches back up. So, sometimes the PPZ is the best in slot SMG, and I actually recommend it above the M39. True, the M39 has the highest DPS and the lowest TTK, but it also suffers from really low accuracy. Things need to be almost right in front of you before every bullet will hit. So the PPZ has the damage and the accuracy to back it up. Although it sometimes suffers from ammo bankruptcy. Be sure to bring a recon with you when you're bringing the PPZ. And lastly, we've landed upon the Demolisher's heavy weapons with the polygonal rifling and quick charge armature attachments, and you already know what that's gonna look like. Yup, the minigun just shreds the competition. There are a few outliers here and there, but that's mostly because the smart gun has more than twice the ammo amount of the minigun. Once the minigun is done reloading, it quickly grabs its first place again. The outliers completely disappear when we look at the crit TTK of the weapon, and unfortunately, that's because the smart gun has no weak point damage to speak of. And because of this, the difference in crit TTK is massive. On extreme, the minigun crit TTK is almost half of that of the smart gun. The gap is a little smaller on insane, but pretty significant nonetheless. Which begs the question, why? Why did Cold Iron Studios not give the smart gun any weak point damage? Well, consider this. Would you give a weapon that can auto-aim for you a lot of damage and weak point damage? I believe Cold Iron Studios did this deliberately, as to not make the gun overpowered. It's already aiming for you. Why make it more powerful? However, this lack in crit damage does make the minigun the more appealing weapon. But it does come with its own side effect. The recoil on this gun is massive. When you fire this gun full auto, your aim just goes all over the place. I'm having more luck with the Vulcan, believe it or not. But this does bring me to the end of the video. Just to summarize, the plasma rifle, the M38, and the minigun have the lowest TTK, reinforcing my claim that these weapons are statistically the best in slot weapons in their respective classes. If you like this video and you want to see more Aliens Fireteam Elite, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so that you never miss another upload. And I'll see you when I see you.